Okay, I apologize for the delay, everybody. We were in an executive session that ran a little over. First item on regular business is citizens' concerns. If there's anybody here with an item not on our agenda. Yes.
Yes, West Acton, and I'm here about Kelly's Corner. I have uncovered the FinCom presentation on the 13th of February 2018, and in that presentation on page 2, the frequently asked question that was being answered by the Kelly's Corner Committee was whether or not the design accommodated the build-out of the Kmart parcel with the housing complex, and yes, the answer was yes, it does. That it built to the maximum capacity of the Kmart parcels as proposed in the zoning article that was voted down at town meeting. And so I'm concerned because I feel like we're building a racetrack to accommodate this huge development, and talking about incurring a lot of money to pay landowners to get room for all these extra turning lanes, and also putting a light in to effectively channel all the traffic from Kmart into the Charter Road kids crossings, which the crossings will be 10 feet longer. So I feel like we should go back to the original design that we voted for in the balanced network public forums, and not build the racetrack with all the extra lights and turning lanes. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Chairman's update. Had a meeting last week, so nothing really new, just a few quick reminders that there is the Mass Department of Transportation public hearing for the 25% design on Kelly's Corner tomorrow night at 7 p.m. in this room, room 204 of Town Hall. The voter registration deadline is also coming up on March 6th, and that is to register to vote in either the upcoming town meeting and local elections. There will be a public forum on accessory dwelling units also on March 6th at 7:30 p.m. in room 204 of Town Hall. And the police department is continuing their Coffee with a Cop program with Coffee with a Cop on Saturday, March 16th from 9 to 11 a.m. at the Dunkin' Donuts on Powder Mill Street. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick announcements, and most of these you can find in the Municipal Monthly if you subscribe to the Town News Flash. But the Police Department was recently awarded a grant for $8,000 for sidewalk and traffic safety and pedestrian and bicycle safety, so we hope to use that this summer or spring for some enforcement and other things. I want to thank the Public Works folks and the Highway Department for the excellent work they've done the last few weeks, and especially our Highway Superintendent, Richard Dickey Waite, who is retiring this month. He's worked for the town for 40 years, and he's certainly been an institution. He's going to be missed, and we'll hope we'll get one more snowstorm out of him, at least before he goes, so he can finish on a strong note. But, you know, he's had a great career, and he's been a great part of the organization. So I just wanted to recognize him. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And we all thank him very much for his many years to the town. Okay, so the first item under Selectmen's business is the Acton-Boxford Regional School Committee school budget and capital presentation. I see a number of representatives from the school district here. So Dr. Lade, are you kicking it off? All right. Thank you. And thank you for coming despite having a snow day today.
No problem. We were on a streak with no snow days, and we blew it. It was a good run.
Yeah. That's pretty good.
So while this is coming up, first I just want to take an opportunity and thank you all for having us here tonight. It's our pleasure to be able to give you an overview of the school budget, our operating budget request for FY20, as well as give you an overview of our capital presentation that we've been doing in a number of different venues. This is a complex budget proposal because it includes a substantial capital plan that totals about $20 million. So it's a good opportunity to get out and make sure that we're being clear and answer any questions that you may have. I also want to recognize that we have Dave Vertolino and Marie Altieri here as well. So as you have questions, you know, we'll certainly call on them. And I see Paul Murphy from the school committee as well. So thank you. And you know, John told me I had 2.5 minutes to get through all of these slides, so I'll try and be concise and to the point. So I'm just going to give, from an operating budget standpoint, I'm just going to give the very broad overview because we've gone through this a number of times in different forums. But essentially, this is a moderate growth budget where we are requesting an addition of 8.6 FTE personnel that span 5 major areas. So when we looked at our priorities in the budget process, we had 5 needs as a district that we wanted to address. Those include some strategic additions for things that we already had multi-year plans to do. Those included things such as like our digital learning program, our STEM coaches that we had been implementing. So these are things that were already approved in previous budgets, but we want to continue that build out over multiple years. We also wanted to support the district's capital plan as a major priority, and in order to do that, we're requesting a capital projects manager because we just don't have the manpower to be able to execute a large-scale plan without additional staffing. We also wanted to meet the increasing needs of some of our students with social emotional needs throughout the district. This has been an ongoing area in all of education, particularly in Massachusetts, that we see increasing numbers of students with high emotional needs, and we need to continue to support those students. We also wanted to make sure that we could support a nursing grant that we were losing this year. The state nursing grant used to be able to fund staffing positions, and so one of our nurses at the junior high school was funded through that nursing grant. The grant no longer can be used to fund the nurses, but we need the nurses, so we're assuming some of that cost in the operating budget. And then finally, we needed to grow our staffing in certain ways, so we chose to shift around some of our internal resources to be able to do that, because it's not just about increasing staffing, it's about making sure that you're putting the resources where you need them. The second major priority was around district's work on equity, and so we had a number of things that we were doing within the school budgets to do that. One of the largest is we're adding a field trip assistance fund for some of our low socioeconomic status families so that students who could not afford to traditionally access some of our field trips, principals will now have access to a fund to be able to do that. In order to execute that, we're putting $100 per low socioeconomic status student into a principal's fund at each school so that as principals go through the year and they identify field trips, they can automatically fund families to be able to attend. Second area that we looked at were school supplies, and we are choosing to purchase all of the elementary school supplies through school budgets rather than having families do that, because we're finding that it's cost prohibitive for some families to be able to fund school supplies. And then the third area where we're working on equity that I want to highlight for you, we have been working with the Anti-Defamation League to promote kind of a student-led program to help students talk to students about issues around race, religion, diversity, and we chose to go with a student-led program because we've been doing significant work with our faculty and staff over the last few years around understanding issues of equity, and we wanted to bring that same work to the students. So we're including the cost of stipends and program support to the tune of about $20,000 for the first year of implementation in this budget as well. And then finally, where I'm going to talk more at length tonight is the implementation of the capital plan, which has been something that has been about 5 years in the making. So I'll give you a brief history of that as well. The overall impact of the budget, we're requesting a budget of $90,982,111, which is a 2.55% increase over last year's requests. The Acton assessment is 2.09% increase. So that's We've been able to close that gap through the work of the school committee, through the work of members from Boxborough, through members of work from Acton and ALG as well. So I don't know if anyone has overall operating budget questions, or you want me to go through the whole presentation first?
Why don't we do the whole presentation and then?
Okay. So capital development was a significant goal of the school committee heading into this fiscal year. This is just a timeline, and I'm not going to go through every item on this timeline, but essentially it looks back to FY15 when the district had budgeted about $155,000 per year for our capital improvements. Over that time span, the district had enlisted Doran Whittier as an architectural consultant to do a master plan feasibility study, and they identified about $120 million in projects across the district. That's the number that community really recalls hearing is the district needs $120 million in capital improvements. We're going to talk about how we worked through that $120 million in a minute. But that led to gradual increases where this current fiscal year we have $1 million in capital improvements in the operating budget, and next year we're proposing to increase that to $1.25 million. This year we formed a capital subcommittee, which included members of the school committee, members of the administration, and one member of each finance committee from both communities to make sure that we were communicating about the needs of the district and enlisting support along the way to execute this plan. We were able to develop a long-range capital plan out of that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the next slide. So there's three big buckets that we've been talking about as a district for a few years now. One is the operating budget and what we're addressing on an annual basis. So the proposal moving forward is to increase the annual operating budget from $1 million to $1.25 million, and I'm going to talk about how that we want to grow that over the span of the next 12 years as well. We also have kind of our mid-range plan, which includes kind of what we would think of as that Dorr and Whittier report list of capital improvements needed across the district. And we needed two things to happen this year. One, we needed to develop the project scope and sequence for what project actually needed to be completed. And then we also needed to make sure we had a funding plan to be able to execute those projects. The third bucket is really the long-range plan, and the Dorr and Whittier study included all of these items, but we know we can't tackle all of these at one time. These need to be well thought out and thought out in the long term. So these include our major building projects that can be on the horizon. The Douglas Gates building project was just approved to move forward through the MSBA process. We now know also that Conant will need some type of program in the next decade. We also know that the administration building needs to have a future determined for it. We don't know what that is at this point. And we also know that at some point we need to do something with our maintenance shed and bus maintenance facility. Going from Google Slides to PowerPoint translates in very interesting ways. This looks a little bit better in some versions, but you can get the main idea. There are 4 key threads I just mentioned to you as well. The first is to develop that project scope and sequence of the actual list of projects and the order in which we want to accomplish those. The second was to increase our operating budget so that we could continue to fund those on an annual basis. We also know as we went through the process that we did not have enough cash in our operating budget in any given year to execute the number of projects we would need to in order to catch back up. So we're proposing to borrow funds. I'll talk about that. And then finally, we want to ensure the long-range stability of our capital plan. And so we're proposing establishing a capital stabilization fund for the district as well. And I'll speak to that more. The first question most people in the community have had is how did we get from Dorr and Whittier's list of $120 million in projects down to what we're proposing is about a $20.8 million capital plan over 12 years. We know that Dorr and Whittier did a comprehensive plan. They also helped us identify the schools for MSBA that might be eligible for core building programs. But they also went through a visioning process where they identified items that were beyond needs of the district and went kind of into that wish list category of things where the district might like to grow programs. We do not need to relocate the pool at the high school. We don't need to relocate the locker rooms. Things like that are just deemed as not necessary. So what we did is we enlisted Skanska, which is an owner's project management consulting firm, this year to work with our capital subcommittee. And they went through, along with our operations department, all of the list in the $120 million of Dorr and Whittier projects in order to identify those projects we needed to include in a capital plan. The strategies they used to hone that list: they removed the large building project, so they removed the Douglas Gates project, they removed the Conant project, they removed the maintenance shed, and they removed the administration building. They also looked for redundancies. For example, there were projects in the Dorr and Whittier report that said you should replace a roof ladder here, you should replace the flashing around this part of the roof, you should replace the edging around another part of the roof, and oh, by the way, replace the whole roof would entail all of that work anyway. All of those cost estimates were cited as redundancies in that report, so we removed all of those. We also took out the items we deemed as wish lists. For example, we do not need to relocate the high school locker rooms. We also accounted for all of the work that was completed to date. We took out those items deemed as preventative maintenance that we do on an annual basis anyway. And then we updated a lot of our cost estimates as we went through this process. That brought us from $120 million down to $20.8. million, and that's what we're moving forward in this process. Again, you can see with the large building projects taken off that list, that's a large number of these items. This is a quick chart. I won't spend a lot of time on it, but this is just showing the increasing commitment the district and school committee have made to capital needs since full regionalization. Back in FY15, we had about $155,000 in capital improvements budgeted. This year, we're at $1 million. FY20, we're proposing to increase it by $250,000 to 1.25. We're proposing next year as well, we'd like to increase it by another $250,000 to get to 1.5 million. And then our plan long range is to increase that by 2.5% every year. That will grow that over the course of the 12-year capital plan that we've developed to about $2 million, which will be 1% of the assessed value of the buildings once the new building project comes online. And that's 1% of the assessed value seems to be the industry standard. Going into the bond and how we're planning to fund this capital improvement plan. So we're doing that through a combination of operating budget increases, 1.25 million this year, 1.5 million next year. So that gives us, over the course of the first 2 years of this plan, about 2.75 million available. Our goal is to make our highest priorities in the capital improvement plan. We need the funding to be available for those in the first few years of the plan. So we're intending to borrow $7.5 million. So the next one is the key, because we've had a lot of questions. How did we come up with $7.5 million that we needed to bond? In all honesty, that was about balancing priorities. And the two priorities we needed to balance to come to the $7.5 million were, what are our highest priority projects, but also balancing what can we afford to repay within our district's operating budget so that we are not going to the community for a Proposition 2.5 override as part of this. As we played that out, 7.5 million met both of those needs. If we increased the bond amount, we could certainly accelerate the program, but we weren't comfortable with the impact on our operating budget long term. We thought it tied our hands as a district to too great of an extent. With the bond and the budget, that will make about $10 million available over the first 2 to 3 years for the capital improvements across the district. And then the rest of the plan will have about another $10 million available over the remaining life of the plan. I'm going to say this again because I've said it many, many times and I put it in red. The debt is repaid through the operating budget. This is not a debt exclusion. All right, it is not a debt exclusion to do this. We will repay this through the operating budget. It will require the approval of the school committee, which it has, and a 2/3 vote at both the Acton and Boxborough annual town meetings to be able to authorize this debt. It allows us to address our highest priorities over the first 2 years, and it also maintains the capacity within our operating budget for newly identified projects as we move forward. The next slide, I'm going to go through these quickly, but I wanted you to at least have them as backup. This is an example of the bond repayment schedule, and we have chosen to go with a level principal repayment plan so that we're paying less interest over the life of the bond. It will also decrease the payments as we go, so the greatest burden is early in the plan, and it frees up cash later in the plan. Essentially, what we're proposing is to use short-term borrowing as a strategy as we complete projects through the first 2 years, 2 to 3 years actually, at which point we would issue the bond and then begin note repayment. Finally, the second piece of that was very important to us, and I don't know if the pointer works, but over in this column, the supplemental capital after bond repayment, what was important to us is we didn't want to create a bond repayment schedule that tied up all of the district's money that we wanted to allocate toward capital. We needed to be able to reserve some funds in order to be able to continue the capital plan. So this was an important item to us, and you can see in the first 2 years of the plan we have a lot of cash available. These are the years that we were most concerned about. Years 1, 2, 3, and some maybe even 4 of the bond repayment, and I'm going to talk about that when I talk about the stabilization fund next. But I want you to remember these numbers when we go from having $1 million available down to the $300,000 and $600,000 a year available, because that's an important number to bridge. Those were the years we were most concerned with, which is why we thought of the stabilization fund. One other note on this. The long-range prospects, you can see as soon as we get out of these cautious years at the beginning of the plan, we then come right back up to about $1 million in capital available as we move forward. And when we complete bond repayment, now we're at the $2 million a year threshold. So it gradually gives us more and more money available to execute the plan. This is just to show you that, we wanted to keep in our minds what the existing debt service schedule is. This actually has no impact on the current proposed capital plan because the capital plan is repaid through the district's operating budget and it will not be a debt exclusion. However, this will come into all of our minds as we talk about the new building project. And you can see, we're coming up where we're soon, within the next 5 years, to have paid off much of the district's debt. So we're in a good place. I'm going to shift now to talking a little bit about a stabilization fund, which is that fourth tier of the entire capital plan. The opportunity to develop a stabilization fund came about when the legislation was enacted in 2016, allowing regional districts to establish stabilization funds. The DESE advisory that they published at the time indicated that any use of a stabilization fund or the creation should be based on a district long-range capital plan. So it's being proposed in conjunction with a long-range capital plan that's been developed and approved. Our auditors, when we got the notes back from Moody's on the last audit report, two different things. The auditors noted in our audit report that the development of a stabilization fund would be a prudent means of capital budgeting and strategically targeting our financial reserves in an appropriately transparent manner. Moody's also noted on our bond rating report at the end of last year that one of the reasons we were not AAA status was our reserves were below the national average for regional school districts. Massachusetts is in a unique position because we have a 5% cap on E&D, so we would think that Massachusetts is limited. However, the use of stabilization funds does not impact that 5% cap on E&D, so you can exceed that overall 5% cap. I want to be transparent about how we're intending to do that so that you see that the stabilization fund isn't just a general savings account for the district. It's targeted to capital. It can be only used for purposes for which the district could borrow money, which is capital plans. And then any other use of that has to be, one, voted by the school committee, but two, actually approved by the Commissioner of Education. So it would have to be an extraordinary emergency for any use outside of capital expenses. It also addresses some of the concerns we heard early on from our finance committee members that were targeted toward worries they had that if we bonded money, we wouldn't have enough funding available in our short years of that plan, that years 3, 4, 5, in case either A, there was an extraordinary emergency that we needed to tend to for capital, or something could derail the actual plan from being implemented. So this actually, we believe, solves all of those problems. This is from the top of our capital worksheet that we presented on Budget Saturday, and we will be presenting to the Finance Committee as well. But essentially, I wanted to show you a couple of things. One, we're proposing at the end of this year to make an initial budget appropriation from E&D or the current operating budget into the capital stabilization fund of about $1 million. That's a placeholder because we don't know what our cash flow will be at the end of the year. We need to let quarter 3 play out and then we'll have a better idea of that. But we're anticipating about $1 million. That will be the initial funding. And then I talked about that there's a string as we start to repay the bond. There were lean years where we didn't see this amount of money available for capital. That is years 3, 4, 5. You can see we're actually intending to use some of the money that we've put away in year 1 of the plan so that we end up leveling out what we have available for capital projects through the lean years of the plan. And that's our intended use of the stabilization fund. We also know that as we get into the years 7 through 13, there are other uses of the stabilization fund we anticipate. So for example, in years 8, 9, and 10 of the plan, and even in year 12, we will actually have to, through our regular operating budget, take operating money and put it right into the stabilization fund because we know that on or about year 12 or 13, the Parker Damon roof will need to be replaced, and it's a $4.8 million project, $4.7 million project. We would never have that kind of cash resources available to the district. So we can either save for it as we go, or we could end up having to bond that amount later and pay interest on it. We would rather try and save for that early and then be able to complete the projects. So that's really the two uses of stabilization, to level out the lean years of the plan, but also save for our long-term projects. Some other notes. So we have gotten the majority of the vote of the Regional School Committee to establish a stabilization fund, and it will need a majority vote at both annual town meetings. I noted the debt required the 2/3 vote at the town meetings. The stabilization fund is a majority vote at both town meetings. The school committee can choose really two different methods to fund a stabilization account. One, they can appropriate it through the regular budget, annual budget process, which goes to town meeting, or they can do a budget amendment, which is what we're proposing at the end of this year. If they choose to do a budget amendment, it would require 2/3 vote of the regional school committee, and then we would have to give notice to both communities that that vote's taken place, and the boards of selectmen of each community have 45 days in which to call for a general vote, at which time the towns could disapprove. But if it's not disapproved, then the transfer can go forward, similar to E&D process. If there's no town meeting called, correct. If you don't call a town meeting, then it's approved. Establishing the stabilization fund, I think I already did that. And then one thing, it has to be used for a purpose for which we can borrow. So that's really consistent with the intent of the proposal. This is a capital stabilization fund we're proposing. And then a couple other aspects we want you to be familiar with. The accounting is similar to other capital projects where this is kept in a separate fund and it carries over from fiscal year to fiscal year. The funds in the stabilization I mentioned before do not impact the 5% E&D cap, and then any interest earned on that fund stays in that fund. I'm going to shift to the last part of this whirlwind tour, and this is not part of the operating budget presentation, but I just want to give you an overview of the building project update. We were able to publish some initial, very, very early projected costs. We know that these numbers are not accurate and they'll change over time because it's too early in the process, but we wanted the community to start to be aware of the tax impact of this. Right now, the early estimated cost of the total project is somewhere between $120 and $130 million total, construction plus design costs. The MSBA reimbursement rate is anticipated to come in anywhere between 35% and 45% once we know all of the eligible costs. So that will be between $40 and $60 million of reimbursement. The estimated Acton share will be between $60 and $68 million, which is, we're anticipating being somewhere between a $650 and $850 annual impact on the tax bill for a single family home in Acton. And then as we go through this process, similar to the capital project, we use short-term bands as we're borrowing and then finally issue the bonds once the project is complete. The timeline for the building project, we just submitted our preferred schematic report where Gates was chosen as the preferred site with a one-phase option, which is the least expensive of those options. Between now and June, we will actually be in design development of that preferred option. June 2019 and early July is our final submission to MSBA of the design documents. And at the August 28th meeting, we're anticipating that the MSBA board will give us final approval for the project and set the effective reimbursement rate, at which point we can calculate the actual single-family tax bill. That's the real number. So we're giving initial numbers. We don't want anyone to be tied to those. They're only preliminary to get an idea. But the actual numbers will come just after August 28th. And at that point, we have 120 days to secure funding for the project through both a town meeting vote in each community and ballot votes in each community. So based on that timeline, we are hoping for town meeting and election in November of the year, probably sometime around mid-November. So that was quick, right?
That was a lot, thank you.
It was more than 2.5 minutes,
That's
sorry.
all right.
Sorry, John.
Thank you very much.
I know you had 30 articles that you were looking at tonight, so I wanted to try and get right to the point.
No, that's why we put you on, this is a shorter agenda. So questions or comments from members of the board? Janet?
I'm very impressed by all the numbers and your capital plan. I know on our side, our town manager is working on a capital plan, but we've had it on the selectmen's goals for a number of years, and it's kind of been a slow process, so we're hoping. I'm impressed. You've set a very high bar for anyhow. I don't think that everything that you said stuck in here, but I have a question because I'm chairing the West Acton Sewer Action Advisory Committee, and there's been a lot of talk about what's going on with the school building project, and I decided to look at the minutes for the building committee to see what they're talking about. And so I had heard about the submission of the sort of the preliminary plan, and that it was going to provide for septic. So I know it's early to be talking about the wastewater treatment system, but I thought if somehow I could get our town manager and you maybe and maybe some staff people to kind of talk and keep each other updated, it would be helpful, because I think the impression I got was the building committee thought they're waiting for the sewer committee to make a move, and the sewer committee is sitting here trying to figure out what the building committee is going to do. And we know that there's going to be more definite or discussion about wastewater in the next probably 6 months or something, or you have that deadline that you said about before you have to submit the final plan.
Yeah, it's coming soon. Yeah.
But I had a question, because I was looking at this is sick, looking at over the weekend, looking at the building committee minutes and looking at the plans for, the proposed site at Gates, but they're talking about a 2-phase kind of construction and demolition, and I honestly got really confused, but I think that maybe the committee's preference was for minimal disruption, which I guess would be possible with just one phase. But then I read some reference to possibly moving students to an off-site location during a certain, so could you kind of clarify what
Sure.
The designs are really pretty, but I thought there's something I'm not getting from all of this, so.
Absolutely. So I'll clarify 2 things. I'll talk a little bit about the sewer piece of that and septic. So John and I actually pulled both of our design groups together at the beginning of the school year, and then we met once, probably about a month and a half ago. I believe, is that about right, John? And just as an update to that, to make sure we were talking through the process, so I appreciate that. The MSBA requires us to design the new school building independent of any sewer connection that might occur. So we actually are required to design a septic system. We could also go on for an on-site treatment proposal. That has been ruled out very, very quickly due to costs. So right now it's septic, certainly with the possibility that we could hook up to a sewer if it was available. We then have to look at avoided costs, and that's something that's just a process. Because we need to be able to identify what the avoided costs might be, what portion of any costs for a septic or a sewer hookup would be reimbursable by the state, and what the impact on the school building project would be. So that's kind of the next step in the process, and that's something as we're heading into our next round of meetings with the building project, we'll be looking more at the building systems now that we've chosen that site. With regard to the actual site and the phasing model, we elected to go with a 1-phase project. And Marie, you can correct me if my numbers are wrong, but it was a faster project, but it also, I believe, was $4 to $5 million less in total costs. So it was, and as we started talking with the principals of the buildings and the educators, the people who we were talking to actually liked the design and the flow of the building more in the 1-phase design. So it was kind of a great trifecta. It was faster, less money, and people liked the design of the building. So that was really the reason we went with the 1-phase design. It actually ends the project about 15 months before it would have ended in a 2-phase design.
Okay, but I don't want to belabor this, but I think there was talk about demolishing part of a building, and it was complicated, and then I wasn't getting a clear picture. That's why probably I should have been going to the building committee meetings and on top of everything else to sort of figure out what was going on. But no, that's fine. I just asked about the soaring thing only because other people have been asking our committee and just chattering about, well, what about the schools? What are they doing? Isn't that going to have an impact? And obviously, it would be nice to include the school campus in West Acton in, the calculations, the estimates, but it would be easier, I think, for us going forward. But thank you very much for the presentation. It's very, very informative.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Peter, questions?
Being on the building committee, I asked some questions about the sewers at the last meeting. It's my understanding that the way the timeline works is the school district doesn't need to say when they submit their final design in July that absolutely they're going to have a septic or they're going to have sewers. If they submit a design with a septic system and the sewers were available at the time they were in construction, MSBA would probably approve hooking up to the sewers. But construction is anticipated to start in the spring of 2020. So the sewers would have to be a sure thing for them to build some. I think in terms of the site work, which happens first, probably the septic system is one of the first things that gets done. So once they start building a septic system, that's going to be what's going to happen. So I don't know if the sewers will be at a stage where the school district can say that they'll, even if they decided that was what they wanted to do, it's up to them, that they would hook up to it, because it won't, I don't think, be finalized then, but maybe. So anyway, it's the spring of 2020 when construction starts. So I was surprised to see that Dora and Whittier underestimated the capital improvement work since, or overestimated the capital improvement work, since they so severely underestimated the work on the new schools, which, as I understand it, was due to the rapidly increasing construction costs over the time between when Dora Whittier first came out with the school design and now. What happened there, do you know?
So, I'll give you an example. We've been in the process of renovating some bathrooms at Blanchard. If we did a whole-scale renovation of a bathroom, that could easily cost us $100,000 to go out to bid on a public bid process. However, we actually have those tradespeople in-house, and so we've been completing, a bathroom renovation for $8,000 to $10,000 with our own in-house tradespeople. It's not the same as having a truly renovated bathroom, but it certainly meets all of our needs. So there are areas where we can actually do projects in-house and reduce costs. We also just found that we had a very advantageous paving contract, so we've been trying to get as much of our paving work done between last summer and the next 2 summers, because it's so beneficial to us that we're finding costs, I think JD said, 30% less, 40% less than what we're estimated for that type of work. So I think it's all about timing, doing the right projects at the right time, making sure that you do them in succession. Dora and Whittier, in a lot of their projects, also included engineering and architectural fees in their cost estimates, and not all projects need that to take place. So I think that's some of the estimates we're working on.
Well, that's a good explanation. Having worked with working with Skanska on the building projects, if they have their eyes on this, they're experts at it. So that's great. I just want to understand this stabilization fund a little bit more. It sounds like you're going to make a decision sometime, maybe in June, toward the end of the year, this vote. And so we would be in a position of having to decide whether to call a special town meeting. It's not going to be part of this town meeting. You wouldn't take the vote before this town meeting.
No, that's correct. Okay. So this was a slide. So, we just gave our Q2 update to school committee from a financial standpoint. And right now, between revenues that are higher than projected and expenses that are lower than projected, I think the number was about 1.4 million that we're anticipating at the end of the year. So that's still very, very early in the school year.
Yeah.
There can be special education out of district expenses that come up. There could be things that are beneficial where we're saving money on different projects that we're working on. So we're uncomfortable. We would have loved to have just proposed it at this town meeting, but we just don't have a firm enough grasp of our end of the year numbers yet to be able to commit to that. So we chose to propose that second budget amendment process, which is the 2/3 school committee vote, and then the opportunity for towns to disapprove of that. Our goal was to be very upfront about the starting numbers and what those numbers might look like. So by talking about it early, if there are questions or concerns, we can hear those early in the process rather than, how we appropriate that money becoming a surprise later.
Okay, so, but this is money that you would normally, say, put into E&D. I mean, this is.
Correct.
This is the result of money left over that you didn't spend at the end of the year. That would go
Correct.
into, so it wouldn't increase the school's budget at all. So-
This does not increase the school's budget. It's money that might traditionally be targeted to E&D.
Right,
That would,
okay. So, be interesting to see if one town calls a town meeting and the other one doesn't, but I suppose we'll just wait and see what happens. Okay, thanks very much. I think that's all my call. I was just going to ask you, can you just tell us what the top 3 immediate priorities are that you have for your capital plan?
there's a number of items at Blanchard that need to be addressed that over the first few years total in the several $1,000,000 range. There were a number of utilities that were kind of buried in this pit, but because it's in a pit below grade, water is getting into those utilities and is degrading the lifespan of those, so we need to remedy that. There were flooring issues as well at Blanchard that we need to replace some tiles. We are also working on a charter road redesign because it's one of the least safe passages for our students to be able to walk up and down Charter Road. We are working with GPI actually on the Charter Road redesign, and so they're actually working on a design for us that ties into Kelly's Corner. We would like to also get our bus traffic off of Charter Road, so we're looking at potentially a road that goes behind the junior high school and connects to the high school parking lots, so that the buses travel on that bus loop and the traffic on Charter Road is independent of that.
Okay, hopefully we can help you out with the Kelly's Corner design, a new light at Charter Road, and a new redesigned connection there to Mass Ave. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
And just to clarify one thing, Peter, they are asking at this town meeting, there will be a vote on establishing the stabilization fund. It's just not putting money into
Right.
it, so we will
Not
vote on that.
appropriating
Yeah,
any money to put in there.
Right.
Correct. This is just the
Later,
establishment.
Right. Okay, Joe? Nothing. Okay, John?
Peter, in your engagement, wellness, equity engagement program, with respect to equity, what percentage of families would be served by the system buying books and supplies for children?
We have about 10.5% of our students right now qualifying for a free and reduced price lunch. Right?
Okay, and they would also get, you're enlarging the program to provide for books and supplies?
Yeah, let me clarify. Maybe I wasn't clear. So school supplies will actually benefit 100% of our students because we will purchase all school supplies for all families. 4 out of our elementary schools are currently doing that at the elementary level. 4 out of the elementary schools are already doing that through their operating budget. We're making sure that all elementary schools do that as we move forward. The field trip fund is something that will be targeted to students and families who could not afford to participate in field trips. That's about that 10% of the population.
Thank you. You guys continue to do a great job with very modest amounts of money in proportion to what other systems spend. So,
You
well
know,
done.
I felt very fortunate coming in this year that we could do as much as we're proposing to do through an operating budget that results in 2 and 1.75% assessments to the communities and still be able to accomplish this much. And that really is the work of these people sitting over here to my left, because if the groundwork hadn't been laid over the last 5-10 years, from health insurance trust to how this district has budgeted for operating expenses, none of that would have been possible. So certainly Marie and Dave have been huge in that, but also the school committee over the last several years has really been thoughtful about how they spend money. Thank you.
I've heard this presentation, I don't know, like a half dozen times in different formats now, so no questions for me. It is very thorough, but again, after hearing it a number of times, finally have absorbed all of the information, and just wanted to say thank you. I think, as others have mentioned, you're doing a lot with a little increase. We're impressed with that, and it's been particularly helpful this year at the ALG process as well. You guys were really amenable and helpful in making sure we were able to close the gaps that we had and meet our sort of ALG goals there. So that's been wonderful, and I think the stabilization fund and capital plan are a really creative way to get at what you're trying to do with your capital plan, and it's very well thought through, and while it's a lot to explain, you explain it very well, and it's gotten refined every time I think I've heard it. So hopefully in another month it'll be perfect, and everybody will get it at town meeting in the first time around. So
Exactly.
just thank you very much. I will open it up if there are any questions or comments from members of the audience. All right, seeing none, we will take a vote on this later for our recommendation on the 3 articles, but thank you again for coming tonight despite your snow day, so we appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, staying on the school theme, up next we have the Minuteman Regional Technical High School budget presentation. I believe Pam is going to do that. And we'll just, thanks Lisa, sorry, switch over the presentation.
While we're waiting for the presentation to come up, I, again, just want to thank you for the opportunity to come and present about Minuteman and our budget for the coming year. So just very briefly, because I know you have a long agenda, a little overview again of Minuteman, combining academics and career and technical skills. The goals that we have for ourselves at Minuteman are really to serve the needs of our students as well as local workforce development and to support the interest of our communities. Students alternate weeks between academic classes and instruction in the technical fields. And while all the academic subjects cover standard principles, the specific curriculum is designed to really align with different learning styles and also relate to a student's technical course of study. And every student leaves Minuteman with certifications qualifying them for immediate employment. But again, we've talked about this in the past, but just as a reminder, typically about 2/3 or just under 2/3 do go on to college. Just a little more good news for Minuteman. You can see some of the accomplishments that we're very proud of over the past year. Moving on to the building project. The building project remains on time and on budget, and students are still scheduled to enter the new building in September of this year. Very exciting, opening September 2019. Now, this is a drawing of what the entrance of the new building will look like. I will very quickly go through some pretty pictures of the construction because, again, we're very proud of the progress that's being made. Tell me if you want me to stop at anything, but in the meantime, I did just want to show, progress is at pace. It is going to be very exciting to be able to have students come in September. Spending a little bit of time on enrollment because, of course, enrollment is a major factor in the Minuteman budget. You can see with the blue numbers that the in-district enrollment has been relatively steady, and in fact, over the past year has been up slightly, about 17 students. Where we are seeing a significant decrease is in the out-of-district students. And that is really driven by changes in state regulations that determine eligibility and have caused that steep decline in students attending from outside the district. Again, just to give you another look at where the numbers are, you can see, the overall numbers have been remaining, in district have been remaining steady, but there has been that relative decrease in out-of-district students. Enrollment has been a major priority for both the Minuteman School Committee as well as the administration. We have a lot of initiatives going on right now to increase enrollment, including, working with our in-district communities. The superintendent has been having a lot of conversations to increase the communities in the district, and has been having a lot of conversations with Watertown, which has expressed a lot of interest, as well as having conversations with DESE about what the impact of the regulations is having and preventing students who want to be able to access vocational technical education and preventing them from doing so. Here's a little good news on where we are right now, and this is just total in-district applications that last year, from October 17th to September 18th, there was a total of 147 applications. From October 18th through January of this year, we've already surpassed that with 157 applications. And you can see here a chart of Acton historic enrollment, and just as a reminder that our annual assessment is a rolling 4-year average of these numbers. Excuse me while I balance my papers here. So the budget focus for this year, is on the new Minuteman High School, that the FY20 budget will fund the first year operating in the new Minuteman High School, and will also include the transition costs moving into the new building, and then, sustaining the old building until demolition. So moving on to the FY20 budget, you can see, excluding the debt service, that the FY20 budget, including those transition costs, is an increase of 3.38%. And the debt service on the building project is right now coming into the peak years, as you can see on this slide. The next slide gives, including the debt service, what we're looking at, and given that, we are seeing an increase in assessments for all member communities. And the next couple of slides will go into some of the major drivers of that. So some of the major changes, there continue to be reductions in the staffing levels, but increases in negotiated compensation for teachers are reflected in this. We're also this year budgeting decreases in the stabilization account and instructional equipment that won't be as necessary in the new building. Other drivers, as you can see, increases in health insurance and retirement, but decreases in utilities. The new building will be more efficient in the old building, and the budget does not include in the governor's bond bill, there was funding for a photovoltaic overlay over the parking lot, but that money, while it was funded, has not been released. So we could see further savings in there. Another major change moving to the new building is that that Minuteman will be moving to contracted custodial services just because of the needs of the new building. So again, looking at Acton's FY20 assessment, looking at those line items that I talked about, we can see what Acton's portion is, and what leads to roughly $151,000 increase in the annual assessment. So I will stop with that good news at that point and see if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Pam. Questions or comments from members of the board? We'll start on this side. John, anything? Just start on that side. Shannon.
Pam, I'll start with the slide that I had a question on late in your presentation. Did Minuteman, or does Minuteman right now handle their custodial service in-house, or you mean they have employees who are doing or do they have students practice custodial work?
They do have employees doing some of the custodial changes, and some of the changes in the staffing levels are reflected in the changing in the way that they'll be handling custodial services.
And what was the target enrollment? Because I did so many presentations about the building project and the reduction of the district when people withdrawing, and I honestly don't remember what the opt-out was, like 600 something.
625.
So thank you. So it looks as if you still need what? You need 100 more students to kind of have the optimal enrollment, and you're talking to Watertown. I didn't know what the plan was if Watertown is balking, or if there's another option.
Watertown is expressing interest. They haven't signed on the dotted line yet, but there are active conversations there with Watertown. So at this point, the efforts to increase enrollment are really in 3 different areas. One is working with our member communities. And what can we do? I know I hear from our admissions staff that Acton is wonderful in terms of allowing access to Minuteman, and we're really looking to helping other communities be able to, that may not have, some communities have as good access, others don't, but really looking at and developing, what is the minimum needs, for member communities to be having access for Minuteman, to be able to be giving information to students, to teachers, to guidance counselors. Also doing a major initiative in being able to reach parents, and for the first time this year kind of instituted a program of parent liaisons in many of our communities. So there is a Minuteman parent who is able to talk parent to parent with communities, and there is a parent liaison from Boxborough who can be really relating to parents at AB. The second effort is really be looking at expanding the district, and right now, as I said, most of those efforts, because there have been a lot of conversations with Watertown, have been with Watertown. And the third is working, as I said, with DESE to see if we can have impact on the regulations that have been preventing, 9th graders from even considering looking outside their district.
Yeah, I was wondering, I don't want to get into the weeds, but I was wondering what it is about the new, or maybe they're not new, but there's state regulations that determine eligibility, and a lot of this out-of-district students aren't attending. Is it because they're now required to go to a school in their own districts or their own towns, as opposed to being able to go to Minuteman?
Yeah, if any town offers any type of vocational technical instruction, even if it's not the type of instruction that the student is looking for, they're prevented from looking outside of their own district in the 9th grade. And that's had just a major impact.
Yeah. that sounds familiar, so you must have mentioned it when we met
Yes.
for coffee a few months ago. I can't have just been reading something, Thank you very much, and thank you for
Yeah.
presenting. And I'm looking forward to, I'm going to be off the board, but I do want to go to the open house when the new building is ready. My name is on one of those beams, the topping off ceremony, so I feel committed to it. So I look forward to seeing the finished product.
Well, last time I was here, I talked about trying to arrange a time to have, members of the board come and do a tour at Minuteman, and I wasn't able to organize that before the cold weather came in. Hopefully, if there still remains interest, I still want to have that happen.
Maybe after town meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
Peter?
Does Minuteman still run their program at the was it junior high school? They had
Yes.
a program? Is
They
that
do.
part of the assessment, or is that in the school budget?
It's school budget.
Okay, thank you.
Joe? John?
So it's about
John, can you just do the,
It's about 100 more students you need to get to the optimal number of about 625.
In that range. I think it's a little less, but yeah.
And hopefully the way to get there is by adding Watertown and bringing in new towns to the district.
Bringing in new towns, increasing the enrollment from member towns, and impacting the current regulations. It's kind of a three-pronged attack.
Well, thank you for all the good work.
Thank you.
and no questions from me, just thank you, Pam, and I thought this was a very helpful, it's always great to see the progress going on at the building, and while I'll be off the committee, hopefully I'll also be able to stop by and see it when it's open. I always say to members of the board, if you haven't had a chance to go to Minuteman, definitely do. It's really wonderful, and it's great to see the different programs that are offered. Hopefully, the state will come around on their regulations, because I do think Minuteman offers a lot of different and sort of innovative programs that other voc tech schools don't offer yet. And so students aren't able to enter in the 9th grade when they already know that they want to do the advanced manufacturing or some of the other things that you have available. So it just seems unfortunate and silly to prevent students from doing that. So anyways, hopefully that will come around too. That will be one way to help with the enrollment issues, because I think you are offering the kind of programming and the opportunities, and then especially when you have the new building, I think you'll get a lot of students really interested when they see the equipment and things that you'll have available there. So I think it's great, and thank you very much. And I will ask if there are any questions or comments from the audience. Great, seeing none. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Okay, up next is discussion of the host community agreement with Nature's Remedy. Mr. Manager.
Thank you. A few weeks ago, the board discussed a letter or a vote that you took last August of 2017 to provide a letter of non-opposition to Nature's Remedy, which is a company that's looking to operate a registered marijuana dispensary in the town of Acton on Great Road. Since that time, we've been made aware that a host community agreement is a requirement, not just something that you can choose to do. So I've been working with our town council and representatives from Nature's Remedy who are here this evening to put together the host community agreement that was included in your packet. I apologize for including it today, but we were working on it up until then. So basically, and I also included some guidance that's provided from the Cannabis Control Commission and the Department of Revenue, which basically lays out what a host community agreement is and what it isn't. And our council has indicated that this includes all the things that make it a host community agreement. One of the primary parts of it are a host community fee, which is based on revenue generated at the facility. The maximum allowed under regulations is 3%, and that's what this proposal, that's what this host community agreement is requiring. They've also agreed to allow our police department to work collaboratively on the security issues and offer to provide them with the ability to tour the facility for training purposes with reasonable notice on a periodic basis. So understanding that you haven't had a chance to really pour through this, I'd like to know if you have any initial feedback, and if you're comfortable moving forward, that'd be great to know too.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Questions or comments from members of the board? Janet?
I'm fine, I actually did read it. That's probably one of the reasons I was late for the executive session, but anyhow. But I just would like to comment for the benefit of the audience that we're talking about a registered marijuana dispensary, which is medical marijuana. We're not talking about adult marijuana, recreational marijuana. This is because obviously we have a ban in place in our town. But this agreement also sort of addresses that issue, I guess, in the event that the ban were lifted or something changed, or the ban were invalidated, then this organization would still come to the town and get approval from the Board of Selectmen and the town meeting, for doing anything other than medical marijuana. So, but I don't have any concerns about it. I read all the supplemental material, and I understand that the monies will have to go into the general fund. I think I saw that repeatedly in that document, and I thought, whatever you call it, it goes into the general fund. You can use it for some things, but you can't segregate it in a special fund. And you can't call it a gift or whatever. It's still going into the general fund. So I've learned more about Steve Barrett's realm than I need to know. So thank you very much, though, for handling this.
Peter?
This is a retail facility. They're selling medical marijuana to customers, right?
A registered marijuana dispensary provides medical marijuana to customers that are qualified to purchase it.
So paragraph 5 talks about the operator's cultivation and processing facility located in the town. So I think that's a typo, isn't it? I mean, they're not going to be cultivating and processing medical marijuana products. They're going to be selling retail medical marijuana products. It's my understanding, right?
Paragraph 5, is that what you said?
Yeah, I may be reading it wrong. I mean, there's 3 paragraphs here about them. They're agreeing to pay property taxes, even though, I don't know if it's true anymore, the original statute required that medical marijuana facilities be nonprofit organizations, which normally would be not taxable, but they're agreeing to pay taxes, whether they're taxable or not taxable, which is fine. But it talks about if it becomes eligible for status as a charitable organization and a related decrease or elimination of real property taxes and tax revenue from operators' cultivation and processing facilities. So I thought maybe that was a typo. I don't know.
I think that those are probably extra words. It probably could just say facility.
Okay.
Operator's facility.
And then paragraph 19 talks about a deferment of payments. It sounds like a cash flow thing. If the earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, if they perform an internal review and find out those costs, if they don't remain positive, if they're unable to maintain a positive cash flow, as I read it, they can notify the town and defer payments until such time as they're able to make the payments, which is kind of subjective maybe, but I'm sure the town could test it somehow. But the commitment is still to pay 3% of total gross income that the facility receives. Whether or not they're making money or not, they're still paying 3% on the total gross revenue they get. They may be deferred for a while if they have a cash flow problem, is my understanding of the deal, right?
Yes, gross revenue, 3% of gross revenue.
Okay. And I hadn't seen this back up before. Other host community agreements, I think you might have mentioned it in your email, have a provision for essentially gifts to either the police department, the schools, United Way, to fund drug interdiction programs or addiction, avoidance programs or whatever. It didn't wind up in the final agreement.
It was something that we discussed, but it's our understanding that they would consider that as part of a reduction to the 3%. So,
Okay.
we certainly could discuss doing that, but.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Joan? John?
Yes. John, in your cover email to us of this midday today, you mentioned that the agreement provides for a community impact fee equal to 3%. I think what we do have is not that, but the 3% optional local tax.
No.
3% local tax is only for retail.
That's only
And it's only for
retail
retail.
sales
If
only?
you're doing recreational, it's a retail operation, you can do the 3% tax, so.
Yep.
Okay, so the 3% is the impact fee, and that goes to the general fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless the board decides, or unless the town decides to establish a revolving fund, but we're not recommending that.
Okay,
I'm not
okay.
recommending that at this point.
And then in your, just some, I think some typos on page 1 in the fourth whereas, it was passed by a special town meeting, not an annual town meeting.
By special town meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And then in paragraph 4 on page 2, I think when you refer notwithstanding paragraph 2, I believe it's 3 above is the proper reference. Paragraph 4 on page 2. If you go to
Yeah, that should be 3.
And then in the final sentence, the payment described in this paragraph 3, I think it should read paragraph 4.
Yeah, there's probably a paragraph edited. Is that it?
Okay, and then the impact fee just goes to our general fund,
Correct.
and that's paid twice a year.
Yes, the first year, it wouldn't be paid until
Until
the end of the year,
13th
but then
month,
after
okay.
that, thereafter, it's twice a year.
Very good.
Yeah, no, I thought this was very thorough and got to the met the guidelines that are put out by the CCC. My only question was, so it mentioned, so it's for it's 3% for 5 years, but then in some of the guideline information, it said, we can have execute a new one at the end of the 5 years. Did you talk about that at all, or is the understanding it would just be for the 5 years for now, and then we'd kind of figure it out as we go?
I believe our approach was to do a 5-year.
Yeah, no, that's all you're allowed in the
Yeah.
first part anyways. I just wasn't sure if you guys had talked about, if you had talked with Nature's Remedies about the sort of next 5 years, or we're concentrating on this 5 years, and then we'll go from there, which, makes sense. But yeah, no, I thought it made sense to me, and even if the funds are in the general fund, it gives us discretion about where we can sort of direct that funding, and we'll know how much it is after. I know we have estimates, but we'll know how much it is after the first year, and then can hopefully, start to figure out where to direct that within our operating budget, and presumably towards programs that, support the police or address issues of addiction and other, or traffic or other issues that we also see come up as the operation is underway as well. So I think it gives us that flexibility and makes a lot of sense to do it that way. Are there any questions or comments from the audience? Okay, seeing none, then can we, yep. Can you just put on your,
I wanted to point out one other minor typo in paragraph 9.
Yep.
In the very middle of it, it talks about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth line. It talks about including but not limited to operators' claims for deferral under paragraph 1, parentheses E. That should be 19, shouldn't be 1E, because there is no 1E. Paragraph 19 talks about
19E.
deferrals, yeah.
Thank you.
So I think if we had a motion, looking for a motion to authorize the town manager to execute, to finalize and execute the agreement, so we can deal with those typos and other small things
So
that
moved.
come up. Okay, town manager to finalize and execute agreement. Janet made a motion.
Second.
And John seconds it. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, do you want to say why? You're opposed? Just so we know? No? So this is medical marijuana, just to be clear. Okay, okay, all right. Okay, and any abstentions? No. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
That is all set. Thank you very much. Okay, up next, the meat of our agenda is the number 6 warrant article review and recommendations. So we have 53 articles to go through, and in the packets were both the draft warrant, a list of proposed article assignments, and then in the hard packet tonight, there are some updates to the draft warrant that came in today. So first off, I took a stab at doing assignments for the warrant articles primarily based on people's liaison committees, otherwise based on things that have been assigned in the past. And then for the citizens petitions, there I think are 11 of them, so all of us, I just gave a couple. I think, Peter, you lucked out and got 1, the rest of us got 2, and then again, those I tried to do, so like Joan, I gave some of the kind of planning-related ones, zoning planning-related ones. Janet, I gave, yeah, no, I mean, at some point I just kind of divvied them up. John, I gave you the ones related to Kelly's Corner. So, you know, some of it there was a method to the madness, and at some point it was just assigning things. A lot of these, as you know, a reminder for folks, many of these we do not have to do presentations on. All of the citizens petitions, the petitioners will present on, and we will just do a statement on our position, and other ones, you know, the schools will do the presentations on there, and I'll just do their recommendations, and the many that are on consent will hopefully stay on consent. I tried to think about the ones that might cut off and divvy it up so that there wasn't one person doing, you know, the majority of the presentations, and that we all had a little bit to do to pull our share. So were there any questions or concerns with the assignments before we get to recommendations?
It was a good job.
Okay, thanks. Really, was just
I'm
kind
really
of,
happy with my assignment. No, there were no surprises, and
right.
yeah, I knew I had to share in the petition articles, but
Yeah, I know. At first I was going to do them just based on, but then they all would have gone to Joan and John, and I thought that wasn't quite fair. So,
I thought it was very balanced.
yeah, so I tried to, you know, I could do the filtering on my spreadsheet and make sure everybody had about the same number, and like I said, the same number of ones you got to put a lot of effort into versus a little. So, okay, all right, so we will start going through and doing recommendations, and I'll go through them individually. If you've got questions on them, we can do that. If there is anybody here tonight who would like to speak on any, when I get to that article, just come stand up at the microphone so that I know you're here to speak about it. So I don't have to ask for each one. Okay, and I apologize because my list is a little off in terms of the list in the draft warrant, so I'm going to go to the warrant. So the first one is choose town officers. We have a motion.
move to recommend.
Janet moves, John seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, second is hear and accept reports.
Move to recommend.
So we want to recommend or not recommend. Okay. Joan made a motion to recommend. Jan seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I believe there is no budget transfer this year, correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so I think we usually,
I mean, if we
Make no
don't, is it
recommendation?
possible that it will change, or is there?
I don't expect it to.
so do you want to make a motion?
No action?
Yeah, to take no action?
Take no action, okay. Well, Joan moved.
So
I'll second.
Joan made a motion, Janet seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, town operating budget?
Move for,
Recommend.
Recommend. Okay.
Everybody recommend.
We'll say Peter made a motion to recommend, John seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Town capital, Kelly's Corner supplemental engineering and appraisal services.
move to recommend.
John made a motion to recommend, Joan seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, town capital sidewalks and traffic calming.
Move to recommend.
Peter made a motion to recommend, Joan seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Acton-Boxborough Regional School District Assessment.
Move to recommend.
Second.
Janet made a motion to recommend, John seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Acton-Boxborough Regional School District Capital Improvement Plan. This
Move
is
to
the bonding.
Move to recommend.
Okay, John made a motion to recommend, Joan seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Acton-Boxborough Regional School District authorizing the Regional Stabilization Fund. Recommend?
Second.
Okay, Joan made a motion to recommend, John seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minuteman Regional School District
Move
Assessment.
to recommend.
Janet made a motion to recommend, Peter seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Before we make a motion on the community preservation program, I just had a question I saw in the updated one. Peter, have you guys finalized the numbers on these? And is it, because there were highlights on some of them, particularly around Asa Parlin and the bell tower.
I missed the meeting last Thursday, but yeah, they finalized it. It's now 175,000, which was what the town manager requested, so.
And then the bell tower is in there? Okay.
Well, yeah, okay. Huh. Okay.
Okay, okay, does anybody want to make a motion on this one?
Move to recommend.
Second.
Okay, Joan made a motion to recommend, John seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next one is the transfer of real property on 53 River Street. This is what Peter presented last week, or you had a question?
I mean, they changed this a little bit, right? The language got changed, I think, a little bit.
Yes,
According to this
in the-
addendum here, I'm fine with the new language. I'll recommend it. I move to recommend.
Okay,
Second.
Peter made a motion to recommend, John seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the next one is the disposition of real property at 348 to 364 Main Street. So this is also in there, in the sort of supplemental draft warrant. Just give me 1 second, let me get a chance to look at it.
Move to recommend.
Which one are we on now?
Article
340,
13.
364 Main Street, which is in the supplemental draft warrant. So essentially says, authorizing the transfer of the real property from the Board of Selectmen for the purposes of conveyance into, for general municipal purposes, from Board of Selectmen for the purpose of conveyance, to authorize Board of Selectmen to convey such land for affordable housing purposes and such terms and conditions, and for such consideration, which may be non-monetary consideration, the Selectmen may determine in the town's interest. So,
Move to recommend.
okay.
Second.
Janet made a motion to recommend, Peter seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay,
Before we move on, let me just, I got to go back to the Community Preservation Committee
yep,
article. I'm noticing, again, I missed the meeting last Thursday, unfortunately, but I'm noticing in this updates that they did vote $40,000 for the Mill Place Condominium Association. That's the old music school on Mass Ave,
Yep.
down by the bridge in South Acton. In the warrant book, it says 50,000. This is 40,000, which my understanding is that's what they actually voted. So, I mean, we voted to recommend it. I just wanted to make sure that people do that.
yeah, that was the number I was
Okay.
looking at.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the next one, land acquisition or lease 1921 Maple Street, we are still trying to finalize the language on that. So it's still just a placeholder. So for now, I'd like a motion to, I would recommend a motion to defer our recommendation until we have an actual.
Second.
Okay, so I'll say I made the motion to defer. John seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Was
opposed?
that a citizen article?
What?
No.
I'm
No.
sorry, we on
19
257 Central?
No, we're on
No.
1921 Maple Street. Which is,
Oh,
yeah, the Gordon Richard
okay, I
property.
thought we were going to consider taking this out. Do we have a deal on this? Oh,
I would hope to be able to provide you with an update at your next meeting.
okay, when's the deadline for finalizing the warrant?
12. This, we would have a deferred recommendation deferring our recommendation in the printed warrant, and then depending on if we finalize and have something ready, then we will, which is what we've typically done in the past. And hopefully we'll have it this time.
Okay, we did that last year.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we were considering, I thought, just pulling it and not having it in there, but I'm comfortable with either one. I don't know, how do you feel, John?
Oh, we got to soldier on this one.
I mean, if we can get it done.
No, let's let John take the
Okay.
lead, and hopefully he'll bring home a nice agreement.
Okay.
Okay, so the next one is the citizens petition on the land acquisition for 257 Central Street. Would somebody like to make a motion either way on that one?
I don't know, what should we do, take no position? I'd vote not to recommend, but, I have a
Well, so
feeling
that, I
it's
guess that's a
better.
discussion, is do people want to take a position or not on it? Personally, I think I would move to not recommend it. I do think that this one is not a non-binding resolution, and so there are concerns around it. And I don't think that we should be spending $250,000 to buy a side yard.
Of course, I've had a discussion offline with John about, whether even if this were approved, if we would be obligated to take action in accordance with it, because I gather council has an opinion that we have some discretion, but
Well,
anyhow.
yeah.
Well,
But
there-
no, I mean, I would move not to recommend.
Yeah, there's also the threshold question that this pocket parcel is under a sales agreement with a third-party developer. I've not seen the agreement. I don't know if the property owners have any unilateral right to rescind the agreement. And there's been some talk that the property owner is willing to sell the land to the town. And, we could find ourselves in a very sticky situation if this passes, and I believe with the 2/3 vote, we're required to make an offer to purchase this property, and if the owner then turns around and and says, yeah, I want to sell it to the town, and then the person who's under contract to says, no, you're under contract to me, and if you want to sell it to the town, I will sue both of you. You know, we walk into a messy lawsuit, you know, or potentially a situation where the developer says, yeah, okay, you know, you can sell it to the town, but you have to compensate me for my time and my damages. And the owner turns around and says, well, I could sell it to the town. I want $250,000. Town, you make up the difference to the developer for him to walk away. That's not the position we want to be in or a discussion we want to have.
Peter?
No, I agree 100% with John. In fact, we got a letter from abutters to the property, an email this week, supporting the development. They're going forward with the ZBA, looking for their permits to go ahead and build the 2 townhouses. So it seems to me it's so unclear exactly what, you know, the deal is, or the representations of the owner has been that he would sell to the town, that we'd really be going out on a limb to pass this article. So I would support a motion to not recommend this.
Yeah, and I agree. I also, again, I feel like we're authorizing the Board of Selectmen to spend $250,000 on a parcel that we don't even know is for sale, that could cause legal concerns, and that frankly it's less than half an acre, which is a lot more than we pay per acre. And the Open Space Committee didn't recommend it because it's not, again, sort of in line with what they feel is an appropriate use of town funding for purchasing open space. So I don't think it's the right thing to do, and since it is authorizing the board to do something, it's not a non-binding resolution. I think we need to take a stance on it. So before we take a vote, I see a member of the public. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm David Martin. I live on High Street. I was just wondering if there's any idea of what we might do with this property.
The proposals, if we bought it, the petitioner was suggesting like a pocket park or potential use for the farmer's market, although there's ongoing concerns that the farmer's market wouldn't be able to stay there. So it's not clear.
My preference is that we know what we're going to do before we buy. I don't think it's good policy for the town to buy first and ask questions later.
Yeah, yes, and sometimes a problem with citizens petitions of this nature. Okay, so do we have a motion?
I moved earlier, about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, so you made a motion. Janet made a motion to not recommend.
Yeah.
Peter seconded it. All those in favor, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Collective bargaining agreements, we don't have finalized language on that yet, so I would ask for a motion. I'll make a motion to defer our
Second.
recommendation. Okay, I made a motion to defer. Joan seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, then we get to consent. Demand fees for late payments. No, yeah. I mean, I could read through these. How about I read through these, and if anybody wants to hold one of these, we'll hold them, and otherwise we can maybe make one recommendation for all of them. So for the consent, these initial consent items, so that's 17 demand fees for late payments, 18 the commuter lot and station maintenance, 19 the septic disposal enterprise budget, 20 the transfer station and recycling enterprise budget, 21 the sewer enterprise budget, which includes the capital, 22 the ambulance enterprise budget, 23 the transportation enterprise budget, and 24 the revolving fund budgets. Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion that would apply to all of these?
Move to recommend consent articles 17 through 24.
Okay, Janet made a motion to recommend all of these. Joan seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, Article 25 is accept legislation for the Agricultural Commission.
Move to recommend.
I will second it. Janet made a motion to recommend. I seconded it. Is there any other discussion? Questions on this one? No? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next is the amend general bylaws, right to farm.
I'll move to recommend. I just would mention that there was a reference in, I think it was section 4, there was a reference to basically the right of farmers to draw water that might have impact on other people in the area, and council explained what that was for, and we got a guidance from the water district, and I think we made an executive decision to just strip the language out because it caused some concerns. The water district commissioner was concerned about it, didn't understand what it meant, so we went to find out what it meant, and it's intended for certain situations where you expect to have a drought and it's going to be an issue, and we decided it was, with the advice of water district, that it was better to just leave it out, so.
So that is no longer in
Yeah.
this.
So that's the only change since there was a presentation to the board about this, in which we really didn't talk about the details.
Okay. So Janet made a motion to recommend. Is there a second?
Second.
Joan seconded.
I mean, I'm just not sure I understand the impact of this necessarily. Does this doesn't override any bylaws
No,
that say you
you
can't
still
can't
just-
have more than 15 chickens in your
Yeah,
backyard or
You have
whatever?
all the existing regulations in the
Okay.
town, including public health. You know, the nuisance common law still applies, all of that still applies. And
So what does it do?
what it started out, originally right to farm laws started out being a way to deal, to sort of counteract nuisance suits, but gradually it's gotten dumbed down to where it's just an affirmation of a community's support for farming. And it's a way, it started out, we wanted to have an AgCom, and I think the right to farm part came in just as to tie in with the idea of having the Agricultural Commission, which is an educational group, and sort of you need to have affirmation that you care about farmland. And so all this right to farm law does is it reaffirms what already exists under state law with regard to protection of farmland. There are a lot of statutes that protect farmers, and sometimes people don't realize that, and especially people who are coming from areas where there aren't farms into an area like ours where there are. It's sort of another way of emphasizing that we have farmland and farmers have certain rights. And we also want to have an AgCom that will help to calm the waters when people get riled about things, but they don't have any enforcement authority. So there's really nothing that's changed, and it sounds strange to say, well, nothing, it doesn't change anything, but so why are we doing it? It's really to emphasize that we have farms in our community, not as many as some neighboring communities, but all of our neighbors, most of our neighbors have right to farm bylaws, and a lot of them also have AgCom. They've accepted the state, the MGL, that lays out the requirements for setting up an agricultural commission. So it was just a group of residents who, including farmers, who wanted to pull this together. And it's really, the AgCom is the part I think that is probably going to be more important because it allows farmers to get together or have a committee that sort of advocates for them and does outreach for them. So.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? So we have a motion to recommend. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. 27, amend the general bylaws, chapter N, demolition delay. I will make a motion to recommend.
Second.
I moved to recommend. Peter seconded. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, 28, amend the general bylaws, public way permits. This is to allow them to not have to go to the Board of Selectmen. Essentially, we can delegate that authority to somebody else.
Move to recommend. We're on 28, right?
28, yep. Janet made a motion to recommend. John seconded. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Number 29, amend town charter planning board membership. This is to reduce their membership, to allow them to better meet quorum.
Second.
Joan made a motion to recommend, Peter seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We'll say we are asking the planning board to come in to our meeting on the 18th to talk about the attached accessory apartment. So if you would like to wait to make a motion vote a recommendation on that, we can. If people feel comfortable tonight, we can also do that. So I'll leave that up.
We have the public forum next Wednesday, too.
This Wednesday, I think.
This Wednesday.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I would be comfortable going forward tonight on it.
okay. I'm seeing nods. Okay. Okay. Does somebody want a second? Joan made a motion to recommend. John seconded that. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay, now we are into citizens petitions. So here we should talk about whether we, on each of these, want to make a recommendation, not make a recommendation, then if we do want to recommend, which way we want to go. So coming nicely after the last one, Article 31 is a citizens petition related to amending the zoning bylaw for accessory apartments. Are there feelings on what to do about this?
I think that I need to try to remember what the planning board approved with regard to the bylaw that comes out of the planning department, but I think Article 31 essentially originally provided that everything would be by permit. There's nothing, the planning department's proposal has a certain portion that's by right, and my understanding was that the proponents of Article 31 would, I think, maybe withdraw the proposal or pass over it or whatever if Article 30 were to pass.
Yeah, and this one has 2,000 square feet.
Yeah, it just,
According to Tara, a mistake.
That was a mistake?
The 2,000 square feet, yeah.
so, well, that's an issue. They're going to have to amend it on the floor if they
Right.
want to keep
Yeah,
it
because the other
in.
one's 500. Okay, so do you want to make a motion to not recommend or to take no position?
Take no action.
Well, we can't recommend to take no action because that is up to the petitioner about whether or not to take no action on this. We have to either not take a position on it, or recommend or not recommend it.
Well, if we're recommending the first one, then we shouldn't recommend this one because it's different.
That's how I feel. I do think this is one where we should make a motion to not recommend.
Okay, yeah, I'll move.
Okay, so Jan's made a motion to not recommend. Joan has seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The next one is the citizens petition number 32 to amend general bylaws for the plastic bag reduction.
I would move to recommend.
Second.
John made a motion to recommend. Joan seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the next one is the citizens petition, article number 33, non-binding resolution, building moratorium.
Move not to recommend.
Second.
Janet has made a motion to not recommend. John has seconded it. Is there any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Number 34, the non-binding resolution, another citizens petition, non-binding resolution, development rate limitation bylaw.
Move not to recommend, only because I don't understand what it would do, how you'd work it, you know.
I'd second.
Janet has made a motion to not recommend. John has seconded it. Any other discussion or questions? All those in favor of not recommending, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, article number 35, another citizens petition for non-binding resolution on land clearing limits.
Move not to recommend.
Janet has made a motion to not recommend. Is there a second?
I'll second.
John seconds it. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Now, Article number 36, a citizens petition non-binding resolution to limit the size of new single-family houses.
Move not to recommend.
Second.
Janet has made a motion to not recommend. John has seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor of not recommending, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Article 37, citizens petition for non-binding resolution to do not add turning lanes at Route 111 and Route 27.
Move to not recommend.
Second.
John has made a motion to not recommend. Jen has seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor of not recommending, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The last citizens petition, in Article 38, non-binding resolution to register the intent to purchase the Kmart parcels. I will make a motion to not recommend.
Second.
Jen seconds it. So I made a motion to not recommend. Jen seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor of not recommending, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Okay, now we are on to the next set of articles on consent. So I will read through these. Please note, I think there was a slight update to both the accept land at 49 Piper Road and the relocate Guggins Brook Trail and the removing deed restrictions for 670 Mass Ave. They're in a sort of supplemental packet here.
40 and 41.
40 and 41, we have some.
Okay, so 40 and 41. All right, then why don't I do, if somebody wants to make a motion on Article 39. 670
Move to
Mass Ave.
recommend Article 39.
I will second it. Janet made a motion to recommend Article 39. I seconded it. Any discussion or questions on that one? All those in favor of recommending it, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excuse me, any abstentions? Okay.
That's the blue tarp house.
Yes.
Finally. It's going to change.
That would be nice. Okay, Articles 40 and 41. Are there questions from board members first? Seeing none, are there questions or comments from members of the audience?
Yes, please. I'm Kim Castens. I live at 294 Pope Road. And I have a question for you about 40 and 41. And my comments reflect extensive discussion by the Green Acton Water Committee. However, Green Acton has not taken a position on these articles, so this should be seen as my comments as an individual rather than an official statement. So we've looked a lot into these articles. We had Paul Campbell come in to one of our meetings, and we've had extensive conversations with him. And we understand that these articles are part of a much larger comprehensive plan for the overhaul of stormwater rules and regulations that Mr. Campbell has assembled. And we admire the systems thinking that went into this, where he's taken into account all the different entities that deal with stormwater in the town and the physical features and the natural features as well. But the town meeting votes are only the first step in this process. We'll need, in order to achieve the environmentally favorable aspects of this plan, there will need to be multiple subsequent votes. So CONSCOM will need to have a vote after town meeting. The planning board will need to have two separate votes, one on the groundwater regulations and one on the subdivision rules and regulation. The Board of Appeals will have to have a vote on subsequent changes, which are all part of this comprehensive plan. And the Board of Selectmen will have to have two votes, one having to do with changing rules and regulations under Chapter 10, that begins with establishing the implementing authority and so forth. And the second set of votes that you will have to have has to do with the site plan special permit. So my question to you is, if the town meeting Articles 40 and 41 pass, are you then prepared to vote in the affirmative on these additional changes to bylaws section X and to the site plan special permit?
So that would be a different board at that point, because two of us are leaving this board.
Okay.
So we can't really answer, and we can't, I don't want to speculate on what a future board will do.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
our terms are up at the end of town meeting, so it's awkward timing. But
Okay.
I believe they would come to the Board of Selectmen, and then it's up to that board.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's awkward the way it's sequenced, because the way the town meeting articles are written, good environmental protections that were voted by previous town meetings and put into the zoning bylaws are being taken out, with the promise that the subsequent votes will put not just those environmental protections back in, but additional environmental protections. So the entire package, taken in its entirety, is something that the Green Act and Water Committee would be enthusiastic about. But if you just sit and read the articles, it does not look good from an environmental perspective. So that's what's troubling to us. But I respect your answer that you can't speak for a future board. Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem. Okay, then I will read through all of the remaining articles on consent, and if anybody wants to hold any of these to vote separately on them, please let me know, and otherwise we will take one large motion again. Article 40, amend general bylaw, stormwater management revisions. Article 41, amend zoning bylaw, stormwater. Article 42, amend zoning map 16 Knox Trail and 585 Main Street. Article 43, amend zoning bylaw, housekeeping corrections. Article 44, accept street Braybrook Road. Article 45, accept land gift for 49 Piper Road. Article 46, relocate trail easement Guggins Brook.
I just want to make a comment. I'm supposed to meet with Tom Tidman and Jim Snyder-Grant on Wednesday to work out the language that goes in here, because I don't know if it's somewhere else, but.
I think we had,
Or maybe it's a summary or an
supplemental.
explanation. Yeah, there's a language there, but I think we're going to put in.
The
I think
summary?
we're going to put in a summary. I don't know. But yeah, the language is in the supplemental thing,
Right.
so, okay.
Yeah, a few of these still, I know the chapter N needs a summary, a few still need summaries here and there. Article 47, authorize easement. Article 48, highway reimbursement program, chapter 90. Article 49, insurance proceeds. Article 50, gifts or grants. Article 51, federal and state reimbursement aid. Article 52, performance bonds. And Article 53, sale of foreclosed properties. Okay, do we have a motion on all of these?
Move to recommend consent articles 40 through 53.
Second.
Janet made a motion to recommend all of those. Peter seconded it. Any other discussion? All those in favor of recommending Articles 40 through 53, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, got through 53 articles. I keep, I need to get back to here. Okay, we just have our consent agenda up, so I will read through these. If you want to hold any, please say hold. Consent item number 7, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Chris Hardy, Nara Park, June 23rd, 2019. Number 8, one-day alcoholic beverage license, Linda Vieira, Nagog Woods Clubhouse, March 17, 2019. Number 9, approve amended meeting minutes, January 5th and 7th, 2019. Number 10, approve meeting minutes, February 22nd, 2019. Number 11, request for change of membership, volunteer coordinating committee. Number 12, Eagle Scout Court of Honor for Brian Gower and Jonathan Gong, April 6, 2019, which John will represent the board at that celebration. Number 13, accept gift Recreation Department Revolutionary Community Yoga for the amount of $1,500 to support the 2019 Summer Concert Series and special events. Number 14, accept gift Recreation Department Odessa Concord for the amount of $750 to support the 2019 Summer Concert Series and special events. Number 15, the MBTA Advisory Board designee David Martin. And that's just our selectmen report.
Move to approve consent items 7 through 15.
Janet's made a motion to approve items 7 through 15. Joan seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have a motion to adjourn. Janet's moved to adjourn.
Second.
Peter seconded. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you very much.
What would have to happen? So we should